Where sunlight filtered through towering oaks and maples, lived a tiny squirrel named Tillu. Tillu was quite fast already, zipping up and down trees like a flash of rust-colored lightning, but he had a grand, ambitious dream that fluttered inside him like a hummingbird's wings. Tillu wanted to be the fastest nut collector in the entire forest, faster than anyone who had ever scurried before. He spent his days practicing frantic sprints, filling his cheek pouches until they bulged, and charting the quickest routes between the hickory tree and his cozy little nest in the hollow. Every morning, Tillu would wake before the dew dried, stretching his legs and warming up his whiskers, ready for another day of high-speed training. He believed that if he only moved fast enough, if he never slowed down for anything or anyone, he would surely achieve his goal. Tillu practiced his starts and stops with fierce dedication, seeing every acorn and walnut not just as food, but as a tiny trophy waiting to be claimed. He loved the feeling of the wind rushing past his ears and the thump-thump of his tiny heart, pushing him faster and faster through the undergrowth. This drive to be the very best started to consume all of Tillu's thoughts, leaving little room for anything else, especially kindness. His speed became an annoyance to the other, slower creatures of Whispering Woods. If he encountered anyone on his path, he wouldn't stop or slow down. He would simply see them as an obstacle delaying his progress. Tillu convinced himself that they should understand. Greatness required absolute focus, and courtesy, he mistakenly thought, was just a waste of valuable running time. One sunny afternoon, Tillu was performing a complex maneuver, a rapid zigzag across the main forest trail, when he saw Sheldon the tortoise slowly making his way home. Sheldon, who was very old and steady, was crossing the path with careful, measured steps. Tillu didn't call out a warning or take a slightly wider route around him. Instead, seeing the opening dwindle, Tillu put his head down, tucked in his elbows, and burst straight through the gap, nudging Sheldon's shell roughly as he passed, leaving the wise old tortoise wobbling slightly. "Watch where you are going, Tillu," Sheldon called out, shaking his head gently as he regained his balance, his voice slow and patient, like the dripping of water from mossy rock. "Rushing will only lead to trouble, young one." But Tillu didn't even pause. He shouted a quick, dismissive reply over his shoulder. "Can't stop, Sheldon. The nuts won't gather themselves. You just need to move faster." Tillu thought Sheldon's slowness was just silly, and he felt a burst of pride for how much time he'd saved by forcing his way through, instead of waiting even for a second. The very next day, the forest experienced a sudden heavy shower, turning the lower parts of the trail into a thick, gooey expanse of mud. Tillu, of course, refused to take the long, dry route around the swampy patch. He decided he was fast enough to skim right over the sticky surface. As he launched himself across the mud flat, he spotted Pipkin the rabbit carefully stepping around the edge, trying to keep her bright white fur spotless. Tillu zipped past Pipkin without even realizing the small disaster he was causing. The mud he sprayed high into the air showered down all over Pipkin's clean white coat, turning her ears and the tip of her nose an unfortunate shade of brown. Pipkin let out a small, sad squeak of annoyance. "Oh, Tillu, now I have to wash everything all over again," she lamented, already starting to shake the thickest drops off her paws. Tillu, already halfway up a maple tree, merely paused long enough to shout, "Sorry, but speed first, Pipkin. Laundry later." He felt a small pang of guilt, but quickly buried it under the urgency of his next training drill. Later that week, deep in the twilight hours when Tillu was racing back to his nest, he came across Soren the owl, who was perched on a low, comfortable branch, just starting his afternoon nap. Soren was a large, imposing owl who slept deeply during the day but was never unkind. Tillu needed to use that specific branch as a springboard for his final dash home. Instead of respectfully finding a different route or gently waking Soren, Tillu chose brute force. With a loud scramble and a heavy thump, Tillu landed right on the branch, just inches from Soren's head, using the poor owl's perch as a trampoline to launch himself higher into the canopy. Soren was so rudely jolted that he let out a confused, sleepy "hoo." and nearly fell off the branch, clutching the wood with his talons. Tillu barely noticed the disruption he caused. He was already soaring through the air, shouting, "So close to a personal best! Must keep moving!" Soren watched him disappear, shaking his feathery head slowly and muttering about the lack of respect some young creatures showed for a good sleep. One glorious autumn morning, a grand announcement was made throughout Whispering Woods. The annual Nut Gathering Championship was scheduled for the end of the week. The goal was simple: collect 10 nuts from a specified area and race back to the finish line by the big old stump. Tillu's heart pounded with excitement. This was his chance to prove he was the fastest, and he boasted loudly to everyone he met about how easily he would win. When the day of the contest arrived, all the forest creatures gathered. Sheldon the tortoise, Pipkin the rabbit, and even Soren the owl were there, though they were participating for fun and not focused on speed. The starting whistle blew, and Tillu, fueled by pure, unbridled ambition, shot off the line like a rocket, leaving dust clouds in his wake. He reached the collecting area first and began shoving nuts frantically into his mouth and arms, ignoring the other participants entirely. Tillu was so focused on collecting his nuts faster than anyone else that he didn't stop to make sure they were secure. He grabbed 10 nuts, piling them loosely in his arms, relying purely on his speed to carry him to victory. He turned and flew towards the finish line, convinced he had won already. But the journey back was uneven, with roots and small stones littering the path. Suddenly, he hit a small bump, causing his entire tower of precariously balanced nuts to wobble dangerously. Crash! The 10 precious nuts tumbled out of Tillu's grasp, bouncing and rolling down a steep little slope. Tillu stopped, heartbroken and stunned, watching his victory vanish before his eyes. He had been so fast, but rushing had caused him to lose everything. Meanwhile, Sheldon, Pipkin, and even a slightly faster badger approached the finish line together. Pipkin had spotted an extra heavy walnut for Sheldon to carry, and Sheldon had kindly moved a troublesome twig out of Pipkin's way. They were slower, but they had helped each other keep their loads secure. Tillu watched the 3 friends cross the line, their heads held high, not with the pride of speed, but with the quiet satisfaction of having worked together. Seeing them succeed where he had failed, Tillu finally understood. He walked slowly back up the path, tears pricking his eyes, and found Sheldon and Pipkin sharing a small laugh about their successful trip. I am truly sorry," Tillu mumbled, hanging his head. "I was so mean and rushed, and I ruined your coat, Pipkin, and nearly tipped you over, Sheldon. My rush cost me the victory, but it cost you my friendship too. Can you forgive me?" Sheldon smiled a slow, wise smile. "We always forgive a repentant heart, Tillu. True victory isn't about being first, but about helping others reach the end alongside you." Pipkin ran up and nudged Tillu gently. "We're glad you learned that lesson, Tillu. Now come, the forest is cheering for all of us." The entire forest roared its approval, not focusing on who finished first, but celebrating the spirit of teamwork and kindness that had won the day. From that moment on, Tillu still loved to run fast, but he always ran with a wide, careful berth and always stopped to offer a helping hand, realizing that kindness and teamwork always win in the end.